Welcome back to the podcast. Hope you're doing well. It's a pleasure to have you here today. We have a very special guest. But before we get into that, real quick, housekeeping note. 53% of the listeners, viewers of this podcast are not subscribed. So please do us a huge favor and just hit that subscribe, notify, leave a review. All that stuff greatly helps. We really appreciate it. It's amazing how many people that this podcast is reaching currently. I'm thankful to each and every one of you that tune in every week. Today's podcast is with Tofer Brown. Tofer is a songwriter, a hit songwriter here in Nashville. He's written probably thousands of songs. We talked about it. He wrote 500 before he got his first big #1, which was Night Shift, the John Party song, which we all know if we're country music fans. And if you're interested in business or music, this is a good one for you, especially on the songwriter side. He talks about what it takes to be great versus good, how you navigate highs and lows of the music business, and where to ultimately find your anchor in life. Is it in your career or is it in something else? This episode is brought to you by Korchmar. They are a 4th generation owned and operated family run business here in the United States. I carry their stuff around. I travel, and it is the nicest, well-made leather stuff I've ever had. So I got a backpack from them, a computer bag, I got a weekender bag, and it's all made of like the top 1% full grain leather. You can buy stuff on Amazon, which I've done. It's cheap, falls apart, stitching unravels, but Korchmar, you don't have that problem with. It's actually generation wear. It's like luggage and stuff you could pass on to your kids and your kids' kids. It's that well made. Go to korchmar.com/discount/S15. It's also going to be down in the show notes, or to make it easier, just scan that link down in the corner for 15% off your order. And now, for our episode with Tofer Brown, let's roll the cool intro.
This is the Stephan Hogan Podcast.
I'm pretty convinced that's the only way you can survive in music now. I always tell people, like, you have to diversify the portfolio because the streams are becoming littler. There's a lot of them, always a lot of different ways of getting it, but you got to diversify. Just like any investor would say that with your stock portfolio.
Yeah. Which is, do you know who Chris Locke is? He's
Guitarist?
with Sony, guitar player, but now he's producing records too. And
Cool.
But it's the same thing where, like, that's helped him, I think, more than anything, is the fact that he can produce the records, make the tracks, and do that kind of thing.
I mean, because the reality is, unless you have the single, if you're just getting album cuts, I mean, it looks good on your bio. But it's like, it's not necessarily making the bank grow significantly.
Yeah. Which at the end of the day is necessary if you want to do it for a living.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to be getting a job at Starbucks again.
Yeah, dude. So I got, I should have posted this yesterday, but this, I just put up questions for Tofer.
And no one asked anything.
No, I got questions.
He's like your aunt in Missouri wants to know who your favorite aunt is. Oh, Aunt, I only have one.
I thought that. Do you know Andy Barron?
Yeah,
He's a photographer.
I do. Oh gosh, I don't even want to know what he.
I don't know how tight you guys are, but I could tell that was an inside thing. But he was like, "Why haven't you written a song called Unpopular Opinion yet?"
What an idiot.
Is that because you're full of them? Full of unpopular opinions?
I always post my thing on Instagram, just unpopular opinions, because I just love things that people like. But people always go weird when I post that, and for some reason, the two topics that always come up are Beyonce and Taylor Swift. Everyone's always like, Beyonce is overrated or Taylor Swift. And I'm like, that's not unpopular. I'm like, I want silliness. Like, I don't like bananas.
Yeah.
Because they're gross or something.
Yeah.
We're all
You have very pithy posts on your story.
He's very pithy.
Yes. All right. This one I thought was interesting. And maybe we can start here. What's the difference between a good and great artist?
Oh. And cut. That's a really good question.
Because how many artists do you think you worked with? Just a rough number.
500 to 1,000.
Okay.
Probably.
over what span?
The last 13 to 15 years, around there. So that's quite a few every year. Probably more, honestly. I'm not good with numbers. What makes a good artist? I think I'll start with great. What makes a great artist is an artist that leads, a leader, like a natural born leader. There's a lot of good artists in the sense that they can sing, they can make themselves look presentable, they can do the dance, like kind of act it out. And then great artists live it out. Like they are what they write. They have the conviction. They know how to lead in a writing room. They know how to articulate what they want when they're producing a record. And there's a lot of good artists. There are not a lot of great artists, probably, I would say.
And historically, that would be accurate, too.
Yeah.
Like, how often do we go into record stores and there's so much vinyl and you're like, never heard of that person?
Yeah, I mean, there's that.
But they cut a record.
What's the statistic? Something like 60,000 songs a day are uploaded on Spotify,
Yeah,
something like that,
insane.
Or streaming services. I shouldn't just say Spotify. Like that. That's a lot.
Yeah,
like that's just a freaking lot of songs, and that's probably at least 20,000 artists right there, probably in a day, depending on what the songs or if it's an album or single. And in this day and age, it's so easy to make music. Like back in the 60s or 70s, to record, you had to have a lot of money. Like now, any kid in Paducah, Kentucky, can have GarageBand and make a recording, or Logic or Pro Tools in it. Essentially, you just have to have a laptop, and laptops are cheaper than ever now. So it's like quality is not the standard anymore. Like you don't have to get into a studio. Like Billie Eilish made her first record with her brother in his bedroom, and they had like one microphone, and he had Logic.
Yeah.
And it was a billion streamed album,
Yeah, it's crazy. The landscape's changed. Who's great in your opinion right now? And for the sake of the conversation, I mean, we could go in so many directions genre-wise.
Yeah.
But because we're both here in town in Nashville, who pops to
in
the
Nashville?
top?
Just in Nashville?
Yeah, let's just start there.
I think Miranda Lambert's really great. To me, she's one of those artists that there's always a little bit of mystery to her. Like, what's she up to? Like, everything's not there on the internet all times. Obviously, she has a persona on social media, but like, she tucks away and makes her record, and it comes out, and it feels very her. Like, it doesn't feel influenced by a million things. I don't see her making a record and thinking, are they going to like this? Like, I'm pretty sure she's just like, I like it. That's what matters. And that conviction you feel in her music, like record to record, I think she consistently makes things that make you go, oh, wow. Whether it's you're into it or not, like it's very authentic and true to her. And that, obviously, greatness, there's an element of that that's always going to be subjective, because it's like to each their own. You're either going to like it or not. But I think great artists, it's not necessarily about liking it. It's about just the entity of it and the strength within that artist, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. What's another
great artist? This is like where you edit down so it doesn't look like it took me forever to think of someone.
About it, because this is thoughtful, these answers.
In the country genre, I think another one, Eric Church. And there, you'll see a theme where I'm with these artists where there's, and it's a little bit because they're on the cusp, because they made records before social media was like the influencer of how to get music out. Nowadays, it's like that's how you break an artist. Eric Church, Miranda were making records when MySpace wasn't even out. So it's like social media wasn't, internet sites to push yourself weren't big. But I do think those artists are kind of in the sweet spot where they've built up their fan base, and now they tuck away for a year like, oh, Eric Church, what are they up to? And then they release this monster of an album and sell out 15, 20,000 people a night for a year or two. And it's special. I miss that. I feel like that can't really be the case as much anymore, because if you're a new artist, you kind of have to play what the field is. And the field now is the TikTok and Instagram, which I get it. It's a tool, but it's fatiguing because that isn't the art form. That's just an avenue to get to people.
So when you sit down and you write, I'm assuming you have a lot of say in who you write with at this point in your career.
Quite a bit, yeah.
Do you feel like you ever end up in a write with someone where they don't know who they are, but they had some success on TikTok, and all of a sudden you're talking to someone who's like, should I write that? Like, will someone else want to cut this? Or do you think this is good enough for radio? Those qualities of insecurity maybe or chasing versus what you said, someone that's a leader.
I think that's a lot of these younger artists. And I'm not trying to look down on them because they're figuring it out like the rest of us, but a lot of artists now they're finding their identity based off of instant gratification of a like on a video or oh, it's viral, whatever that means. Like no one even really knows how that happens. I feel like we're all trying and we got our hashtags, but it's still a little bit of a lottery, so to speak. And I think that the problem is the ability for artists to get music to people so quickly it's a double-edged sword in the sense that it's like, it's awesome because, wow, I went from just me in my living room and now 10 million people know who I am. But a lot of this journey takes time. And so what's happening is artists are exploding fast and they don't even really know who they are yet. Like they're still like there's so many artists that have had a viral moment and then they'll not even have the song finished. Like it'll just be the first verse. And then they're like in their head because they're like, oh my God, I got to make this just as good, which that's kind of fun. There's an excitement there, a little like, ooh, but it's also like, God, I don't think we would ever see Tom Petty, R.I.P., doing something like that. Like I feel like now there's more insecurity than ever because value is based off of if something goes viral. And I'm like, you know, you look back to the days of the Springsteens, Tom Petty and Fleetwood Mac, all these, like, so many of these artists didn't even break till their second, third, fourth record. Now, that would never happen. No one, if you don't, I feel like now, unfortunately, if you don't have a song that just happens in the first batch of songs, like, you could be done. So.
Question about that.
Yeah. I shouldn't say done.
No, I get what you're saying, though.
But I've seen artists get dropped, like get a lot of money thrown, and then they don't really take off on this platform or that. And the label's like, okay, well, we're $250,000, $500,000 in the hole trying to make this.
Yeah.
You know, which I get, it's a business.
The data it wasn't good enough on the release. And so they make their decision based off data, essentially.
Which is a lot of this industry now.
Yeah, which I feel like really is any business is data driven. It just happens to be where the music business is now technologically. But one of the things that I think is cool about you, because you have Chromatic, but you're also on, what is the publishing company?
Concord,
yes. So Concord, and then Chromatic's kind of your own thing.
Yeah, where I can sign writers or artists or whatever.
So you're a businessman. I mean, you should be a business person if you're in or writing songs.
Yeah.
Bar none, it's a business. You need to know business. Too many people don't. That aside, you understand the business side. You understand the art side. Do you have compassion for the labels and where they're at in trying to navigate where culture is in terms of the money that they are pouring into artists and how they're operating off of data, and they're not giving artists the opportunity for artist development like the old days?
Yeah.
Or they're not giving artists a second, third, fourth album chance?
I mean, I have compassion for all of us because I do think we're all, I mean, I've been in Nashville 20 years now. This summer will be 20 years. I feel like I've been working in 15 businesses since then. So I do have compassion and grace for all of us because we're all evolving together, and we're all about the time you think you got it figured out. There's a great shift. You know, just like a couple weeks ago when TikTok was going to be gone. I mean, it was gone for less than 24 hours. But if that really went through, then what? Like, what are all like where all these corporate meetings are sitting on these kind of tables? They're like, well, how's the TikTok? How's that? I'm like, that would be a huge loss. So I do have compassion, but I also do think that there is, on the label side, one, they're always going to be competitive with each other, and they're always going to want to sign something before someone else does. So there's a lot of like, I got to get it before I get it. And I think decisions sometimes unfortunately, are not made out of a love for the art. They're just like, it's a numbers game. They're like, oh, well, that video went, blah, blah, blah. We should obviously do that. And whereas before, obviously the pockets weren't as deep back in the 60s and 70s money-wise. So when they signed something, they had to really like it because they're not multi-billion-dollar companies like they are now. So we have the luxury of having more, but because of that, you have the ability to sign 15X, throw them to the wall, and if one sticks, then you're good to go. And so unfortunately, a lot of artists are getting signed that just shouldn't be signed. They're not either. It doesn't mean that they're not good. It's just like, it takes time. Like you need to, if you're going to, I always tell people, I'm like, we're told to write about our life, but like a lot of these kids haven't even lived life. They haven't even, there's so many artists that are like writing these breakup songs. I'm like, so what kind of relationship? They're like, oh, I've never been in a relationship. I'm like, it's cosplay at that point. And I'm not saying there isn't, like, I didn't grow up with the truck, but I can write about it. Like I'm in this town, I get it. So there is an element of always being creative. Like creativity is pulling from God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, and like kind of throwing it out there. But I think when it comes down to the artists that really become great, from good to great, is like that connectedness that they have with what they're saying. Like you're like, when you hear, I think the reason why artists like Adele get massive is because like when she sings those songs of heartbreak, you're like, she kind of lived that. Like, and there's that, you can't formulate that. There are great singers that can do that, and there is an element of that. You know, there's the artists that cut all outside songs, but I think it's because they find themselves in that song. It doesn't mean you have to write it to be able to sell it, but there's that life attachment that, I'm sorry, a 17-year-old is not going to be able to sing about divorce to me.
Oh, 100%.
You know?
Yeah, I think it was Jody Williams. I don't remember.
Oh, he's amazing.
Yeah, he was on the podcast, and I think he said in your 20s, basically he said your 20s, you're getting life experience. And then when you hit 30, it's one of those things where your songwriting really starts to get good because you've had more life experience.
Yeah.
And then the older you get, to an extent, and the more you experience life, the more you have to draw off of in your writing, which is what you're saying.
Yeah, totally.
Or else it's just fabricated.
Mm-hmm. And there's, I don't want to say that you can't sing something where it's not, you know, I'm sure there's a million songs that people sing in country pop where they're like, they didn't live that. But I do think the thing that sets apart from a good song to a great is there's that humanity connectedness there that is just like, it feels set apart to me.
Okay, here's a question.
Yeah. Okay.
So Wine Beer Whiskey is what, 3 times platinum?
It is.
Is that a good song or a great song?
You're going to ask me about my own songs?
Yeah.
I think it's a really good song. Great. I don't want to say it. It just feels like cocky. Obviously, it's resonated enough for a lot of people to listen to it. I think for what it is stylistically of a drinking, having fun, I think it's pretty great. Like it makes, you know, you could say a song like The House That Built Me, you're like, that's a great song. Mm-hmm. Like just the emotion of that. It's totally different from a drinking song. But
100%.
So the classification is different. So I don't want to be like blanket statement, great. For what it is of like someone going out on a Friday night to a little big town show and throwing their drink up is pretty great at doing that.
Oh yeah, that's what its job is.
Yeah, like the job is not. We didn't write that song thinking, "Oh man, we're gonna get Song of the Year with this." Like we're like, it came from a levity moment in a conversation with me and the band and my friend Sean, and it came out, and we're like, because music is fun too. It doesn't, it doesn't have to be a ballad to be a great song.
Well, like, because I think about these great songs, and then I get real deep and introverted and introspective, and it's like, oh, it's got to be A House That Built Me, or we go back to some of the Tom Petty stuff. But I think there's also the tunes where it's like, yeah, it might not be a decade-defining song in terms of greatness, maybe not, but it is a great song for what it's intended to be, which is that concert experience, which is that on the pontoon boat, on the summer, on the lake, you name it.
Exactly.
That
like
song's
it
job.
It serves the purpose, and it's doing a great job at that.
Yeah, and honestly, it's like the public is deciding if it's great or not.
Yeah. Yeah,
and that's why it's 3 times platinum. Same things with Night Shift. Is that 2 times platinum now, or 1 time?
I think actually it might be backward. I think Wine Beer Whiskey might be double, and Night Shift's 3 times. I don't know.
I saw your Instagram, and you were holding some
things,
and a really cool outfit.
Yes, thank you.
What was that?
It was a cool, like, cowboy-looking outfit type thing. I don't really like a jean suit or something.
All I know is I was like, that's sick.
He's like,
dude.
that fit is fit.
Yeah, dude. Like, those plaques are okay, but what is he wearing?
What's that drip, dog?
What's the drip?
Well, I mean, there was something I was going to say. You said something a second ago, like the listener has kind of fulfilled that and saying, like, they're streaming it, they're buying it, or whatever means of getting. One of my favorite quotes is a Paul Simon quote, and he's like, the song is not finished until it gets to the listener. And because it's very easy as a songwriter, a producer, anyone creating what is coming out and being like, is it done? Is it done? And I'm like, it's not really done until it gets to your ears or someone's ears, and what they take on from that is the finishing moment, whatever it means to that listener. And when he said that really clicked, because I'm like, you can write and rewrite and edit and edit and edit. And like, I have so many songs that have come out in my career. I'm so grateful, but I'm like, sometimes I listen back, I'm like, that could have been a little bit better, but I'm like, it's okay. It's where it's supposed to be now.
Yeah. And fun fact, just this stuck with me from our last conversation, but you wrote 500 songs roughly before you got your first number 1.
Yeah, probably. Probably.
That's what you said on when we talked before, around that number.
Like having like a big hit,
exactly.
like big song.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's so funny.
The Night Shift
was like
first,
the big song. I did have a number 1 on Christian radio before that, which is funny, because people don't really talk about that. but it takes a lot of songs to get really great songs that cut through to the point where we call them evergreens, where it's just going to kind of live on and be its thing.
Yeah.
I don't even know at this point how many songs I've written. Thousands, probably.
Yeah. That's cool, man.
Yeah.
So we keep kind of going back to, let's see who you referenced. Tom Petty, Fleetwood Mac, Bruce Springsteen, now Paul Simon. I see a theme, and I want to go back in time to the artists that we listen to now, that we still are spinning in our playlist or looking up on Spotify, or we're going and we bought a record player and we're buying old used vinyl of these amazing bands and artists that came out of the 60s and 70s, some 80s.
Yeah.
Now it's 2025, and I think this question, and I'm curious what you think about it. Do we have any artists right now that like the 60s to now would be like what, 40, 60 years, roughly? I don't know if I did my math right. 60, 40, and
The
20.
80s is 45 years,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
55, 65.
So in 60 years from now, is any of this current music that we're listening to on Spotify Hot Country playlist going to be being listened to, you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you think we have artists right now that are going to be the equivalent to the Paul Simons, the Fleetwood Macs, the Eagles?
I think cross genre, like there's several I can think of, and like I just think
who are some of them?
if we're talking all genre,
Yeah, let's go. Let's open it up this time.
Whether you like him or not, I think John Mayer's probably going to live on pretty long.
Agreed.
And to me, when I look, just tying it back to what we say, when I think about the crafting and the mysteriousness of the like, who knows what he's working on? Like he kind of has that mindset of those artists that I refer to and go back to, where I'm like, he's living his life and then he's creating his art. And I think that just, it lays such a stronger foundation for a house to last longer too. In the country genre, I think you're going to see Miranda's. I think you're going to see probably the Luke Combs, some of these artists that are just impacting millions of people. And I'm not even saying like I'm the biggest fan of all these artists, but like there's going to be some long careers here, and people that, you know, my kids someday will be like, oh my gosh, you have a Miranda vinyl? Like, you know, those are going to exist. In the country genre, I mean, some of those ones I said, like Miranda's, Luke Combs, Eric Church.
And on the pop side,
I think,
because John Mayer is weird, because to me he doesn't even like fit pop radio.
no, he's just kind of his own thing.
Yeah, he can do what he wants at this point. Did
John
you hear
Mayer,
his song with Zed?
He has a song with Zed?
Yeah, on
Really?
Zed's new record.
I haven't heard it.
I believe it's called Automatic. It's amazing.
Okay, I can't wait to hear it. I'll listen when I leave
Yeah,
here.
I'll show you after.
On the pop side, I do think the Adeles.
Mm-hmm.
I think Coldplay. I think, and you'll see a theme here with these kind of artists that massive impact, where it's like Coldplay could play anywhere in the world and sell out 50 to 60,000 people. I'm like, that is mind-boggling to me. That you can go anywhere from Brazil to Tokyo and just like, it's global impact. But I don't think you have to be big to have a long, like, you know, there's so many singer-songwriters from the 70s that have resurgence where it's like, oh, they get in a movie, you hear their song, and then they have like almost a moment post-career, like they maybe even passed away or something. It's tricky. I mean, I think
So
probably
you see it happening.
yeah, I think artists like Lady Gaga, there will be certain things with her that will probably have a Madonna moment where it just kind of lives on. The Bruno Mars, ours like, yeah, artists like that probably.
Okay, cool. So
I always feel like with these conversations too, I'm like, am I getting the right answer?
well, there's no right or wrong answer,
I
because
know.
well, you stated it earlier. It's just an opinion.
Yeah.
Like an opinion's an opinion. We all have to remember that, and that's the thing about art
Mm-hmm.
in general. It's not a competition. That's one of the things that I really don't like. Is when art becomes a competition. And I have a hard time with shows like The Voice because of that. Not that I don't like hearing amazing talent and seeing people get their discovered, but it's not a competition.
It's like, let's find someone that's better than that person. It just immediately puts people against each other.
Yeah, dude, and it's not right. And I even feel a sense of that just living here. And I guess it's just human nature to be competitive. We want to be the best.
Yeah.
Do you struggle with that?
I'm really competitive by default. Like when I played, my mom always tells the story of when I was bowling with my grandfather. I was like 8 or 9 years old, and he beat me, and I sobbed. So there's a little bit of me that always wants to win. But as I've gotten older, I have a greater spiritual depth to understanding what's meant for me will be for me. And like, I don't have to feel like I have to take or replace or be better than that person. Do I feel that? Obviously. There is a human nature to that where you're like, I mean, you want to do great at what you do, and you want to be successful, whether that's, and that's not just money either, you know, success is just like feeling good about what you're doing and connecting to people. But the more and more I do this, I do have more of a piece of like, okay, this is what I've always wanted to do. And all the cliches are a cliche for a reason. The grass is always greener. Like, it really is. Like, I could have the best thing here and just look over there, and it could just make me look at black and white at whatever I have. But you just have to, honestly, I don't know how people operate in life without a greater spiritual sense of just piece of what is meant for you, rather than being like, I want.
Is that where you find your identity?
Oh, yeah. My foundation is fully in my faith in God. I'm not afraid of that. I definitely probably had my moments in my life and I just turned 40 last year. And having that element of faith sometimes just seems like, oh, really? Oh, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not cool. And now I'm just like, it's always been at the core of me. It's how I was raised. But now as I've gotten older and I'm seeing life for really what it is and seeing the next chapters in life, my brother and sister-in-law have a child, and now I'm an uncle, and seeing life through his eyes, I'm like, oh, it's just so much bigger than we realize. And all these little things that we worry about really aren't that big of a deal at all.
Yeah.
So take it as like a wave of gratitude more than being like, I need this now.
Yeah. So when you were like talking about my faith, was that you being timid or shy because of what you believed?
Yeah, probably. And just, I think I've always had faith and a belief in God and like a relationship with God. But I think also, you leave home and you're 18, 20, whenever you leave home. If you do, some people don't. But that's typically around the age where you go in college or move or something. And I think that's an awesome time for questioning, because it kind of allows you. I remember the first time I moved here when I was 20, and I played in church bands. I was a worship leader. I did all those things. And I remember the first Sunday I was away from home, and I woke up, I was like, I don't have to go to church today. Like, no, the family's not going. And my knee-jerk reaction was like, I'm going to church. Because it's just like, at that point, it was habitual at that point, where it's just like kind of like brushing your teeth. Like, on Sunday, that's what we do. So 20s, that was me not really questioning it, but allowing it to become my own, like, and allow myself to actually understand it without the confines of like, this is our household, this is what we think, And I think that that's necessary. I think it probably, I'm not a parent, but I'm sure it scares parents, because it's like, you raise them and then they clip the wings and they go fly, and you just hope that they land in the right nest. But I'm like, that's just part of it. And that actually is putting your faith into practice in a sense too. And I think, religion and politics are always a little bit of a taboo and a dividing point. And in a writing room, I've learned that I'm like, we're all really different. Like, I will say in Nashville, there is an undercurrent of faith a lot in the country. The Christian world is here, CCM. So that's more common. But, I've spent a great deal of time in LA, and there's a lot of different people with different opinions on God, politics, the way we see the world. And I always am just like, I just want to love people and see them where they are. And I'm never, obviously, if they want to ask me questions about what I think, I'm not going to be afraid, but I've never been like the Bible thumper or like the agenda pusher. I'm like, my favorite quote, I think it was St. Francis of Assisi, preach the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words. And I'm like, that's always been something that I'm just like, I just want to see people where they are. And because you can never put people in this box of like, well, they should understand. Like, we're all just a product of how we were raised. So like, someone that grew up in India and is like Islam, like that's truth to like, that's what they were raised to believe. So I'm not ever going to be like, yeah, that's just unfair at that point. So I'd rather see them where they are and just try to love them and be friends.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't have to all agree.
No.
And I have good friends that don't agree, but
we need the contrast.
I almost like it's important to have relationships with people that you don't agree with everything on, or else you're just living in an echo chamber.
It's not, there's no growth there. Like, and not that this is a podcast on politics, but I'm like, we're pretty divided right now. Like, the sides are getting farther and farther, and there's not a lot of middle ground. I remember, I think the last election, not this one, but I was talking to my grandma. She's now 93, and I just was like driving her. I was like, her name, we call her Mimi. I was like, Mimi, like in the 60s and 70s, like with your friends, did you have friends that believed other things you did politically? She's like, all the time. And we would argue, and then we'd laugh and have a drink. I'm like, now I see friends that are like, I'll never talk to them again. And I'm just like, I just don't think that's real life. Like that, like we need each other. We need to grow, and we need to be challenged.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that, man. Yeah. But I do think there's a time and a place, and the artists that have done it best have been the ones that have kind of not taken sides on those issues, because they realize, like, my job isn't to be a politician. My job's to be an entertainer.
I fully agree that. And I feel like all my favorite artists are never the ones that are on the front line.
Yeah.
In fact, you'd probably be like, I don't really know what they think. And I kind of agree with that. The artists that stick their, obviously they feel like they have a say because they have millions of people that are listening to them. And if they're like, we need to get more votes, like, I get it. I get why people go there. But I'm also like, I also am more on the side of like, that's not really your job.
Yeah. That's how I feel too.
Yeah.
George Strait did a good job.
Yeah.
His entire career with that. But you're right. All those artists that have the real staying power, I believe that they kind of have sidelined all of that and just focused on what they do.
It's because that's not what I'm going to Chris Martin of Coldplay for.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking to a friend who shall remain nameless, and he was like,
Voldemort?
But he was like, who did I just say? George Strait? He was like, George Strait has this image, this country dude, but then when George Strait is like on vacation or whatever, he's on like a yacht, Mm-hmm. That's totally not the image of George Strait. So he would never post pictures on a yacht, but outside of being the entertainer, he just keeps to himself, and there's a level of mystique and mystery, and John Mayer's done a good job of that, like you said.
It makes, to me at least, it allows, that mystery also gives you contrast to almost, not forget about him, it's like, because you'll listen to old John Mayer records, but there's like, I don't know what's happening, so there's excitability again, and like surprise. Like, we don't really have that anymore. Every new artist is like, hey guys, I just wrote this song, it's not even finished, what do you think? It's like, everything is out there all the time, that it's like, nothing is exciting anymore because you already know it. And so I will always like, I do like Coldplay, whether you like them or not. I'm like, I don't know what they're ever working on. And then they drop something, and whether I like it or not, there's always a little bit of like, I can see the 16-year-old me when A Rush of Blood, The Head came out after I was a huge Parachutes fan, and I didn't know what that record was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish that we had that more now.
Clocks was on that record,
mm-hmm.
Right? I bet you were learning that on the piano.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Always.
It's a great record. Might be my favorite of theirs.
I think that's my favorite record, for sure. I saw that tour, too, in St. Louis. Like, before they were like, I mean, it was like 5 or 6, I think it was like 6,000 people, which is still a good size, but now they're playing. I'm going to see them this summer in Nissan Stadium, and there will be 60 to 80,000 people there.
Yeah,
so
dude.
There's a lot of growth.
I know. I want to see them.
Have you ever seen them ever? Oh man, you don't have to like their music to like.
Oh, I love them.
But I mean, like, I feel like sometimes that's where my 40-year-old comes in, where people are like, "You like Coldplay? That's so lame." But I'm like, you go to one of those shows and you're wearing the color bracelets and lighting up, like, it's pretty powerful.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah, because they're a band. They make music for live shows.
Where are you gonna be?
Where?
When you're at the concert, where are your seats?
I think they're pretty good. I kind of went all out.
Yeah.
I think 50-yard line maybe up a little bit so I could kind of see the whole Yeah. I don't want to stand in a show.
If
I don't want to be in the pit.
If your guest bails, whoever
Yeah.
that may be.
Oh, I know who to call.
No, I'll be around.
Okay.
It's interesting that we both have that love for Coldplay, because they impacted me. Coldplay and John Mayer probably had the biggest impact on me in terms of contemporary music growing up. And now it's interesting because format-wise, where would they be? I mean, Coldplay, yeah, they've kind of like done with what Keith Urban's done with his music, where he stayed relevant on a level, you know? Like their productions have changed from going back and looking at their first records to now. But, like, again, it's weird, and this is something that I'm curious about, is formats and where you see formats going in music. Do you see genres going from like country radio to back in more like the 80s, where you would hear Bruce Springsteen, then Tears for Fears, and then maybe some like Motley Crue or something?
I think it's all just becoming, do I like it music or do I not like it music? And I think playlists have a lot to do with that now, because we consume, you know, on Apple, it's New Music Daily. On Spotify, it's New Music Friday. And you go through that list and it's like Bruno Mars, Adele.
It's all bought.
John Mayer, Luke Bryan, and it's all the genres just thrown into one big playlist. So if you're just flipping through, it's like you're kind of getting a little taste of everything. And I think in a beautiful way, I think that's exposing someone who wouldn't seek out country music to being like, oh wait, I kind of like Megan Maroney. You know what I mean? Yeah. Genres are always going to exist because we perceive art in boxes a lot. But I think the importance of them is becoming less and less as years go by. And it's also because we're seeing artists switching genres. Not switching like forever, but like Beyonce made a more overtly country album. It's not like a country album in the sense of like a Nashville sitting in writer rooms here, but it was leaning towards that. So you see that. Or Post Malone coming to Nashville, writing with all Nashville writers. I'm like, I mean, go back and look at Post like Rockstar, or like some of these old, this trap beats and stuff, and you're like, he can do that? And it's partially because he just likes it. Like he grew up in Dallas, I believe, and he liked country music, but he had like a hip hop tone, and like his vibrato worked on beats. But I think because of these artists that are pivoting and shifting, it's kind of just allowing you to be like I said at the beginning, there's like, I either like it or I don't like it, rather than being like, whereas like 10, 15 years ago, I knew people would be like, oh, I hate country music. Or, oh, I don't like pop music.
Yeah.
And now it's just like there's gateway drugs now from one genre to the other, where it's just kind of turning into this Jackson Pollock painting where it's all just kind of thrown there.
Good example. Do you think Nashville's trying to be more like LA?
And what, like just stylistically or just business-wise? I mean, there's a lot of different ways to look at that.
All of it.
All of it. Yeah, I mean, I think they're influencing each other. I would say...
Where do you see, do you see Post and Beyonce as the Nashville influencing the pop world or the LA world?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of big hit songs that have come out in the Shabuzi song, these Dasha songs that are like kind of cross-genre, where they're on pop radio, country radio, hot AC, and I would say, if anything, LA is now kind of looking more to Nashville, because I think the beauty of Nashville and what we have always done at a high degree, a high level, is storytelling, and these lyrics that just they're a steak, man. Like there's just something to grab onto and chew on, whereas pop songs they exist for sure, but they're a lot more production melody driven. I would say. I think most of the world would say that. You listen to a Zed song, like you said earlier. I don't think you're really like listening to those songs as much for like, oh my God, that lyric. Like you're like, man, that beat is awesome and that melody is so fun to sing along to. I think where good art becomes great is when you can mesh those two, sense of melody and story together. And I think that's what's kind of happening right now, where pop is like, oh, you see all these pop artists now that are flying at Nashville writers to LA or coming here because they're like, well, why aren't we marrying this more? Which that's always existed, you know, like Dolly would collaborate back in the 80s and 90s with the pop art. Like that's happened, but I think now more than ever, because of how we consume music too. And like I said, to play this, like, it's just kind of like anything can go a little bit right now, which to me is exciting because as someone who has kind of built a career on, I've always not loved being typecast as, oh, he's a country writer. Not saying I don't write country, but like, I just like good songs. And some days that's a pop artist from LA. Sometimes that's a country artist in Nashville. Sometimes that's a rock artist from Amsterdam, you know? And I think people are more excited about music and experiencing things that they hadn't heard more than ever right now.
When it comes to, I'm curious about Los Angeles writing.
Mm-hmm.
So you get, and I know that a lot, well, I don't know how many, but there's a good amount of writers that will go to LA to write from this town.
Yep.
Are you paired with specific artists when you go to LA? How does that work? And what's that like versus the Nashville writing?
I mean, it is a different process as a whole. I almost moved to LA back in 2014 or 15 maybe, because I was there 3 to 5 times a year. And I always was like, I'm more pop driven. Like that's what I listen to more, pop music, rock music, alternative. So I have spent a lot of time there. The difference, I think that LA, and I won't say this is everyone, it's a lot more production driven. Whereas like the track is like the producers hold the weight almost more so than the top liner. I'm not saying there's obviously the Amy Allens and the Justin Tranners where they're just like these monster songwriters that can write any genre because they get melody, they get lyric, they're kind of the full package. But LA is such a producer town where it's like, oh, the track. Whereas I feel like Nashville is more like the songwriter. Like anymore, like I would say the LA influence in the first 5 to 10 years of my career, I felt a little bit as a producer writer that can build tracks. I felt like I had to like really have a track ready for the write because Nashville was like, oh, this is so fun. We can write to tracks. But now it's getting more away from that. We're like, we'll figure that out later, which I actually, as the foundation of my career, I like writing songs. I like just sitting, playing guitar, playing piano, hitting record on my work tape, on like my iPhone, and then building it later. Going out to LA, I don't actually go there as much because I'm fortunate that I've been busy here and everyone kind of comes through here now, all the LA writers that I used to write with. But it is a different experience. In my experience in LA, unless I'm with an artist, like Carter Faith, who I work with, we did a writing trip out there last year for this record we're working on. And we intentionally wrote with a few writers that we knew we wanted to write with. And I didn't build tracks. Like we literally just recorded on our iPhone. And there were some LA people like, oh, we're not making a demo? Like, because it's like the writing process there is so much like the day of recording that turns into some form of the master
All
recording.
Right. I need to pause you. So Carter,
yes.
You guys go out to LA to write songs for a record intentionally with specific writers. Mm-hmm. Is this a calculated move to try to get a crossover song?
No, it's more so we have our Nashville people that we write and have a majority of the record. Let's dare to be surprised. And because we are like, I don't want to say she is the art. Like she doesn't need all of it. Like she's so brilliant and can write amazing songs by herself. but there is a little crew, me, Lauren Hungate, who signed to Chromatic. We like kind of like her crew, and now a newer one is Steph Jones, who's awesome, that wrote Espresso, and she lives here, and she's an old friend. We've been friends for 10, 15 years, and Carter has really clicked with her. So we have like this crew, and Carter has a few other people that she works really well with. But we're always like, well, as long as like, I feel like we're kind of the foundation, probably me and her, because I'm producing the record, that we're like, we kind of know where the pocket is that we're trying to fit. But like, why don't we get someone to kind of like extend the border a little bit, or be like, what if that's different? Because we know how to get it in where it feels like Carter. But like, you know, when we went out to LA, we worked with Amy Allen, we worked with Justin Tranter, Shane McAnally, Shane's from here, and we've worked a lot. And then Ali Tamposi and Romans, just a bunch of pop people, because we're like, let's see what we can get. And we wrote probably over a course of a week, I think we wrote six or seven songs, and we cut 2 of the songs for the record.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it's I think it's just like, but the core is still there. You know what I mean? It's not like she's going to work with like 8 people in Norway.
Yeah.
You know, like if you look at the foundation of her record that's coming out, it's not dense with a lot of writers. Like there's a majority of the songs are between about 3 or 4 writers. And then there's like a little sprinkling of like, oh, here's one with this person. But most of the time it's like me and her with that, or her with one of her, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I think that's the thing that in music in general, I think that's what sets good records apart from great records. I think that I feel like every meeting and every A&R, all that, the references to the records I talk about, the Fleetwood Macs, the Rumors, the Paul Simon Graceland, the Tom Petty, this record, like it wasn't 50 writers. And I think that, and you're seeing that in pop. Like you go look at like the Sabrina Carpenter record, like it's a lot of the same 3 to 5 people on all of it. And I think those are the records that feel like bodies of work, where I do feel like we are starting to celebrate bodies of work more now than just, oh, that's a hit song. Obviously hit is great because it immediately makes millions of people aware of this artist or this song, and it might make them curious to be like, well, what else do they have? But like they end up staying a while when they feel continuity and they feel artistry. And I think that that's one thing that I'm really proactive about in records that I produce and write. I'm like, it doesn't need to be 8,000 people on this. If anything, that's going to make it sound like a compilation album, because you're going to have so much influence. And if the artist isn't, luckily for someone like Carter, where her identity is so strong, it's always going to lead and feel like her, because she is a leader and she knows what she wants. But I think that's why a lot of these newer artists have their flash in the pan and it's just like gone, because it's tug of war, because they don't know who they are. So they're constantly being influenced by the writer or the producer, and they have a hit and then they're done.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I don't know. I feel like
no, it totally
I always
makes
feel
sense.
like I'm just rambling.
It totally makes sense, man. I like it because one of the things you said that caught my ear was a body of work, and I just go back to the groups that we mentioned or whatever. It was the same writers writing with each other to make a body of work, to make an album, and so to see that happening again, or you and Carter collaborating, you really get to know each other too on a like mesh level.
It creates better art. Relationship creates better art.
It's like it's like a football team. It's like a sports team. It's like any team.
The longer you're with them, the better hopefully the better you get.
Well, yeah.
Not all football teams.
Well, if you're putting in the reps, you should be getting better.
Yeah, and I look back to like writing songs the first time I met Carter. I'm like, man, I remember when we finished up the songs that led to this deal with UMG, I was like, I'm never going to make music this good. I remember just being like, this is our opus. And now the record we're working on, I'm like, this is even better. Like, it's kind of like becoming this machine. It's well oiled, and we've cut out the fat. We know like, oh, we don't need to make a wall sound on this production. Like this is where your voice is coming through. It's fine tuning. And I think that those are the artists that I look up to, like the careers. I mean, I always talk about, but like the Beatles, the Paul Simon, Tom Petty, I'm like, they had their crew and it just kept like getting more fine tuned and more beautiful and more defined. And when they did experiment, like the Beatles went and made Sgt. Pepper's, I'm like, you still felt them in that. Like, even though the sounds and the production and the, you know, they're like busting out harmoniums and weird Indian instruments, but like the melodic sense and the communication between the writing and the production, like it's still there. The foundation is still there.
Yeah. There's just a sitar.
Yeah. It's just like, exactly. And, you know, that probably made some people go, I don't like that, because there are always going to be people that are only want Coca-Cola. They just want the same thing over. And there's art for that. There are people for those, the artists for those people too.
Yeah. I was told that your career is defined by the first song that you release that goes big. Would you agree with that?
No.
Elaborate on that.
I'll rewind. It's usually a first talking point, at least. Like, it's like kind of like, you'll be like, oh, Night Shift, that was a big song. Like, truthfully, I'm so grateful for that song. I think it's a well-written song. I'm so proud of it. But I always say, like, there's a default setting with songwriters. That's not my default setting. Like, if anything, I'm like, I want to sit at a piano and...
Well, no, for artists.
Oh, artists. I thought you were saying for writers.
No, because I know for writers you're a chameleon.
Yeah.
You got to do everything. So for an artist, like the first thing that the public hears is going to be what they define you as.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of your first impression.
Yeah,
So
yeah, correct. So that's what I was getting.
Yeah. Like, and there are career defining songs. Like, I know John Mayer went through a period where he was like, I never want to play Your Body is a Wonderland ever again. But then he like got away from it and didn't play it, and he came back to it, and he like had a sense of like, wow, this really kind of put me on the map. It does define an artist. It kind of is like, that's the first moment where a lot of people become aware of someone, but it's not the only thing that makes them them. And I think great artists know how to build off of that, continue to have success and have different songs. But I think most artists are grateful when they have something that connects to a lot of people, you know?
Yeah. So let's just, for example, continue along the Carter road with UMG and the deal and the record, and you're coming out with it, and so how much, I was going to make an assumption, but I'm not. How much of the say do you guys have in the single?
It's definitely, there are more people that have a piece of the pie now and have a say. And that's what you are signing up for. You know, you are signing up for opinions. People are footing the bill more. So it is more of a collaborative decision, and there is compromise. I think for an artist like her, and I'm grateful that I feel Universal sees it, they know that she's got strong leadership where she's like, I feel this. And I think that is something that I wish was happening more with label and artist relationship, because I think it becomes, we have a say. I'll say that. We have a say, but it's not the end all be all say. But I think that I'd look back, like, it's funny because she is on this label, but I read somewhere that Casey Musgraves wanted Merry Go Round to be the first single, and they were like, no. Like, whatever that regime was of the label, I'm not calling out names, and I don't know if this is the full story, but the rumor and the legend is, oh, that's not going to be a radio song. And to this day, that's her best performing song at radio. And she knew, she was so connected to that song and had this conviction where she's like, this is how I want to be introduced to radio and the people of country radio. And That's still her best performing song at radio. I think it got top 5, which I know people are like, oh, that's not number 1. But like that, you go and see her now, 20,000 people everywhere screaming every lyric of that song. And I think that if labels do a better job at signing artists who are really, truly living their art, they can trust them a little bit more with the leading. Because I think what happened in the 2020 era with the, we all went to Zoom and COVID, like they were signing TikTok artists that were, singing a song while making an omelet, and they had to create them because they didn't have any identity. And then they're having to like, oh, we need outside songs. It's like they're creating the artist. Whereas you have someone like a Carter who's like, this is who I am. Do you like it? If you like it, then let's do this. If you don't, then maybe you're not the right partner. Rather than being like, hey, let's cut this out. Let's change this. Should we dye your hair? Have you ever thought, you know what I mean? Like at that point, it's like, and there is art like that. There's always going to be art like that. I'm not even like trying to look down on that, but I think the artists that will stand the test of time are the ones that are leading, and they have the conviction and they have the knowledge of what they're going for.
What are the top attributes of a strong leader?
Wow. Oh, that's a deep.
Because we've tossed around that term a lot. In
Leader,
this
yeah.
podcast. Leader. And we keep coming back to it.
I think confidence, a willingness to not be for everyone, in the sense that you're like, if this is what I'm doing, like, kind of this sense of like you're with me or you're not with me, rather than being like, well, I'm going to miss out on this people. Like, this is what I'm doing. And like, I mean, you see that in businesses too. Like, whether you like him or not, like Elon Musk, like, it's like he's a leader in what he's doing. Like, he's just like so convicted, and so he has vision. I think vision is another thing, not this, well, I don't really know what I'm going for. Like, it's just like, the artists that I've experienced that in a writing room or a production room, there's like an air to them where you're just kind of like, it's almost like you get this gust of wind where you're just like it's just this, it's intangible too. I don't know if that fully answers your question, but I do think those are some attributes.
Mm-hmm. No, I like that. That was a big question.
Yeah, it kind of caught me off guard.
I wanted to.
I know. I could see it in your eyes.
So what did you say? Confidence? Like knowing who they are.
Confidence.
Not having to be for everybody.
Yeah. Conviction and just vision and just
vision.
Having the foresight a little bit.
Foresight. Now, when you have someone like that, and this is where I'm leading with this question, you have someone that has that, but they want to sign an artist development deal. Let's say that we can like take that, but let's make it Bob. And Bob wants to sign an artist development deal, and there's a label that wants to sign Bob, but the label doesn't necessarily see Bob how Bob sees Bob, but Bob doesn't have any negotiating power because Bob's never signed a artist development deal before.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'd say, why'd you sign Bob?
Yeah, but I mean, they're like, we really like what Bob's doing. We think we can mold Bob into X, Y, or Z. But Bob's like, I know who I am. What are the questions that Bob should ask before signing with, maybe it's a publishing company for an artist development deal,
mm-hmm.
Or a label? What are those important questions to know that you're a fit?
I think an important one always to ask is, if I'm Bob and I'm in this meeting with so-and-so records or publishing, and B, where do you see my career going? Like, what do you see down the road if you could write it out? And just whether I agree or not, just to actually be like, what's your vision? And then kind of check it with my own. There's always going to be a compromise. I'm not about to get on this podcast and be like, every artist should make every decision. Like, there's a reason we get partners. There's a reason you sign with a manager or a publisher. And there's definitely room for artists with incredible vision where the vision gets blurry at times and it needs refocusing. And hopefully when you're with the right publisher, label, management, you have the right people that can keep you in check, because creative minds are creative. So they can go a lot of places. And hopefully if you have the right vision for your art, you're going to have the right vision for the partner as well, rather than just being like, I got to do this because this is my only opportunity. Because Carter, a good example, like she's had a lot of record deal offers and she's had a lot of meetings, and some few years ago, some before Universal, like, and everything in between, LA, New York, Nashville. And I think to find the right partner, like, it takes time. You don't have to rush the process. I think because of the state of society and where we are in general, because of the instant gratification of social media and us knowing news 10 seconds after it happens, if not sooner, we feel like all life has to be like that. And I do think good things can happen fast, but great things take time. And I think that we spend so much of our lives rushing something for a quick fix when we could have something that could stay forever. And that's why I'm so passionate about artist development, because I want to hang my hat on artists that are going to be making music and have music that lives on way past our lifetime. And that might take a little bit more time. And I have some friends that just want to write hit singles, and that's fine. Like, that's never been my motivation. Do I want that? Yeah, I have a life to pay for, and I'm not an idiot. I know that if I write a hit country or pop single, it's going to allow me to live a little more comfortably, but comfortability is not why I'm in this. If I was in it for comfortability, I would not be in the music business. This is the most erratic wave of emotion, up and down business. But the thing that I will always strive for and try to build this career is things I'm proud of. And for me to be proud of something, it does take time. Sometimes you write a song. I mean, I wrote Night Shift in 3 or 4 hours. I'm proud of that song. And sometimes it does, just like creativity, it strikes differently. And sometimes you get it right really fast, and sometimes it takes years. And I think for artists, for them to really have the long game, man, it's going to be a struggle of a few years. And you're going to have a lot of moments where you're like, I made the wrong decision. And you're going to make wrong decisions. You will partner with the wrong person sometime, and you'll learn from that. Carter's had a couple managers. Like, she's had, I feel like we're talking about it a lot, but that's a current thing I'm in.
I think it's cool to use that kind of as a framework to this conversation.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I mean, she was with a manager for a year and a half, and it wasn't the right fit. And at one point, it was the most exciting thing happening. And allowing yourself to give yourself grace too. Like, your humanity is very present in all of these decisions. And with that is moments of, oh no, I shouldn't have done that. And that's how you actually get stronger and better. That's where you start learning to trust yourself more, because a lot of times, you make these decisions, you think they're right. I do think there's always a little bit of you that's like, was that right? Like, but I'm doing it. Yeah, like that apprehension. And if anything, it'll like strengthen that scar tissue in you where you're like, oh, now I know what I want because I figured out exactly what I don't want.
So you have to go through a lot of no's, ups and downs to really figure out.
I still am going through no's all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we all do, right? And life, like, it's just, but that is life. It's dichotomy. If you don't have no's, you'll never know a yes. And so you have to have devastation to experience joy.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just like, I'm just coasting, man.
Yeah. And for the driven personality type that's competitive like you, I would imagine that you are far from complacency, and that you and complacency are not friends, and you don't want to be friends.
Yeah, I'm always excited about what's next, and I'm always I'm a self-motivator. Like, I don't really want to just be like, oh, this is good right here. Like, I'm always, what's the next move? And I will say I am very present too with what I'm working on, but like, yeah, complacency and I don't hang out a lot.
I have a quote.
I love a quote.
Well, it's from you.
Is it?
Yeah.
Ooh.
All right.
I'll take back that I like quotes because I don't want to be.
Nah, man. I think this is a good way to wrap up this episode because a few things that I want to recap. One, you said when you hit 40, you really understood being grounded in your faith and how it's like you climb a hill only to see that there's a higher peak. Mm-hmm. And I think that for a lot of people is a lifelong journey of never being grounded or never being, experiencing gratification or peace or health, happiness, whatever it is, whatever the win is. And Andrew Carnegie always said how much, they asked him how much is enough. He's just like, just a little bit more. The richest man in the world, Carnegie Steel. And so we went that route in your spiritual journey and then, the development and where you're at now in your career. But one of the things that you said in our last in our last episode, you said that you're in the heartbreak business. And we were just talking about being told no. And I think that I'm often afraid of rejection with what I'm doing. And I think that there's an insecurity amongst creative people to want to be liked, to want to be approved of, to have other people's approval by strangers, and it's easy to be like, oh, that reel did good or that podcast did good or whatever it may be. And then we start to, I guess, quantify life based on external factors. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because you said you were referring to it being the heartbreak business under basically the guise of knowing that you are going to be told no, knowing that you are going to get your hopes up or you'll have the manager and be at your highest high and lowest low with that same person. Mm-hmm. So to kind of help equalize the creative that experiences the highs and the lows and to really prepare someone that might be giving it a go, what would you tell them? What would your advice, that last piece of advice as we end here, be for that person that is entering what you called the heartbreak business?
Oh, man. Run for the hills. No, I'm sorry. Man, let me think for 2 seconds. You have to be able to understand that this is not all it. And by that, I mean, this is just something we're doing. It's not who we are. And it is just, if your whole foundation in life is, I'm going to do this to get validation or approval or make money, even if you get it, it's going to break your heart because this is so temporal in our life. And that's where my faith does come in, where I'm like, to me, this whole business is a gift. Like, I've been given this gift, and sometimes the gift at Christmas is really big and sometimes it's small, and I have no control over that. But with that gift comes a responsibility, and it comes with, the heartbreak is just part of it, obviously. And I don't want to sound like I'm just tangenting, but it's just inevitable. And you have to be, if you want this, you have to learn how to accept no. You're not going to be able to do this if you don't know how to pivot that. Because I'm 40, I've been here 20 years, I'm still hearing it all the time. Where accepting it now as it become easier is because I know I have a peace in my heart like this. I was created to create. And just like so-and-so was made to make that art, you have to understand it's not for everyone. And if you're in this for the numbers, and if you're in this for trying to get as many people, you're in it for the wrong reason. So you have to understand that if you really believe this is your purpose in life, it's going to find the place that it's supposed to be seen or heard or experienced. And heartbreak's going to happen the whole way. You're going to, even if you get to where you're going, like it's just inevitable. I mean, we all experience it in every job, in every promotion, in every relationship. But I'm not married. I've had a million broken hearts in relationships, but I still believe in love. And I still am going to believe that someday I'm not going to go through that heartbreak of another breakup. It's the same in my life with music. It's like, I still believe in this. And if you still believe in it, you're going to get through that. It's that, you know, how many times look back to ourselves in middle school, that first heartbreak, or high school, and having that moment where you're like, I'm never going to love anyone again. I'm never going to date anyone again. And then time goes by, and time is the ultimate healer. And you meet someone in college and you're like, I never knew it could be like this. And you forget all of that pain that you had. Yes, you can tap into it, but it doesn't, it's different. It's like, it's re-falling in love with it. And so to me, as much as I've heard all the no's I can hear, and I know I'm going to, I still keep falling in love with this. And I still keep waking up. And it only takes one chord and one melody and lyric that makes me just forget all the pain that I had. And I will keep making music knowing that that can keep happening. So to someone jumping into this, it's going to hurt. But there's going to be moments where it's going to feel really good. And I promise it won't always hurt, but it's still going to hurt.
Well, I appreciate the honesty. That's inspirational.
Yeah, I feel there at the beginning. I felt like Michael Scott, where in the office, he's like, he's like, how do you, he's like, so the thing is, I was like, oh my God, where are my thoughts going?
Nah, dude, you unpacked a lot there, man. And I appreciate you being someone that is going upstream often in an industry that is flowing downstream easily.
Well, thanks for saying that.
Yeah, man. And so that was inspirational for real. So
Great.
I appreciate you being on the podcast today.
Yes,
and,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude, I look forward to seeing how this project unravels for you, and you know where you'll be a year from now. So
I can't wait.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Tofer.
Thank you, my buddy.
And that's a wrap with Tofer Brown. If you want to listen to some of his songs, you can just search TOFERBROWN on Apple, Spotify, and it'll pull up songs Tofer has written, which is really cool. He's just such a cool dude off camera and on camera. Just a genuinely cool human being. Tofer, thanks for being on. And until we see you guys next week, stay safe out there. Please share the podcast again. Like, subscribe, share. If you dug it or have any questions, DM me at Stephan Hogan. Have a good week, guys. Peace.
This is the Stephan Hogan Podcast.